Should we talk about one of those fears? So the fear around the idea that increasing the minimum wage may have a detrimental impact on jobs and lead to job losses. What's the evidence? What does the evidence suggest, both internationally and here in Aotearoa New Zealand, about that particular fear or that impact of minimum wage increases?
It's interesting because, anyone who's done first year economics, someone tells you put the price up, you'll expect demand to fall, right? And that's just not what happens. It's not what happens in migration when you get more people coming in. It's not what's happening in terms of the minimum wage. And that's because when you put the minimum wage up, most people who are earning minimum wages aren't very well paid by definition, and they spend most of what they earn, and that boosts demand. So in addition to firms and employers having to pay more for their employees, they're getting a boost to the demand from the consumer side. So David Card and Alan Kruger did some initial work in New Jersey around people working in the fast food industry and found that you paid people more, raised the minimum wage, and then they would end up going out and buying fast food. And so you get this kind of demand effect. But I mean, the other sort of interesting factor is that it may not be that employment is where employers make their adjustments if there's an increase in the minimum wage. Peter's already talked about you might see productivity increasing. I mean, there's a lot of variation in the literature. There isn't really a one size fits all conclusion. I mean, on one particular point is on training. Some studies show that in response to employers paying people more, they are prepared to train them so that they are getting more bang for buck. So some people will train people, more when the minimum wage goes up. Others will have to economize because things are too tight and have to cut back on training. So there's very, very different results in different situations. But the overall message from the New Zealand studies and the US studies as well, and other international ones, is that for moderate levels of the minimum wage, there's generally not very large impacts on employment. And I guess the interesting question for New Zealand right now is that, I mean, our minimum wage is a very high proportion of our median wage. It's about 65% of the median wage in 2020. You compare that with the US figure of less than 30%, around 29%, I believe, at the same time. So in terms of as a share of median wages, our minimum wage is high. So that's something we should be thinking about in terms of how comfortable we are increasing it going forward.
Okay, I'd like to talk about that in a second in relation to, I suppose, the political decisions and that first fear that Peter mentioned around the political motivations of where we set the minimum wage. But just to finish the thought around productivity, Julie, you mentioned there that training is one way in which the minimum wage going up can sometimes result in increased productivity. Are there others? What are some policy implications for people setting the minimum wage to think about in terms of encouraging productivity gains rather than job losses when they're making that decision?
I mean, employers who are told that they have to pay their employees more, they might invest in capital so that they can get more value out of people. They might raise their expectations of the people that they're bringing in. They might look to hire different people. They might say, if I have to pay this amount of money, I might go for more experienced people. So you can see all of these kinds of choices potentially having productivity impacts as well.